This is the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast, the #1 place for people who want to launch on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. My name is Nalin, and I invite you to join me for tips, hacks, and insights to get you launched and fully funded. Hey everyone, welcome to another session of the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast. I'm really excited to have you here today and to really talk to you about crowdfunding and how you can absolutely crush your goal on Kickstarter and absolutely crush your goal on Indiegogo. So I've been trying this new thing, right? Just so you know, earlier this year, I started working with, let's backtrack a bit. I've been working mostly with like hardware entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who want to launch things in like apparel, things in hardware, things in those types of categories. And earlier this year, I started working with people who are launching tabletop games on Kickstarter. And this past week, I've been kind of asking people if they've been interested in working in a small group to get their projects launched, right? And there's been a lot of excitement about it, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of people really kind of thrilled to do that. So it brings me, why did I bring this up? Why did I bring this particular thing up? Well, one of the questions I asked, since I wanted to really get a really small group going, so it's more intimate, so that people have that accountability, so that people are able to get those conversations going. I asked some questions to make sure that, the program that I'm putting together is the right fit, right? And one of the questions is, what are the 2 or 3 things that you just really want to know about crowdfunding? What are the 2 or 3 things that are really confusing about crowdfunding that you really want to know, that you're just kind of really struggling with? And overwhelmingly so, people talked about building an audience, like overwhelmingly so, right? People, get to a point where they're like, okay, I have my product. I have this thing that I want to launch. I have this already. And I know now, because I've been reading about crowdfunding, I've been reading about how to succeed on these platforms, how to, get funded. And people say I have to have an audience. I have to have a crowd. And so that was kind of the biggest question. How do you build an audience and how do you build a crowd? So it was overwhelming, actually, the number of people who said that. And I was like, oh, wow. I guess this is one of those things, huh? So that's why I wanted to take today to really talk about that, to really talk about kind of the strategies behind building crowd, the strategies behind getting an audience, because a lot of people want to take shortcuts, right? A lot of people want to take shortcuts and say, okay, well, I just buy an email list, or okay, if I just do XYZ, things are going to be okay. But that's not the case, right? That's not the case. So with that said, let's talk about audience building. Let's talk about getting people who are going to love your product and love what you do, because that's what we want, right? People who love exactly what we do. It feels better that way. It feels better if you're creating a product and working on a project that people actually like and people are supporting you, because you don't want it always to be an uphill battle. You don't always want it to be something where you're just hoping and begging for attention, because it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good. If you find an audience that loves what you do, they're gonna kind of gobble up everything that you produce. So, okay, let's talk about this. When it comes to an audience and building an audience, there's no tricks. There's no shortcuts. There's nothing like that, right? What it really comes down to is making sure you know who your audience is. That's the key to it. And yeah, it probably sounds silly. It probably sounds like, it probably sounds convoluted in a way, because hey, why is it that if I know my audience, then I'm going to be able to build a good one, right? Or why is it that if I know my audience, I'm going to be able to build one that will back me on crowdfunding? The trick, if there was a trick or if there was a secret, that would be it. You have to know who you have to talk to. You have to know who you have to market to. And so people kind of focus on the part where I have to build an audience, but they forget to really think about the fact that not only do they have to build an audience, but they have to know who their audience is first. And if they don't know who their audience is, there's no way they're going to build a good audience, because you can easily build the wrong audience, right? So let's take an example. If you're launching something, let's see, kind of like physical products. If you're launching a new pair of like travel shoes, right? If you're launching a new pair of travel shoes and it's super eco-friendly and it's made from coffee or made from like hay or something, right? If it's like an eco-friendly pair of shoes, travel shoes. And you end up talking to just people who you're like, okay, there's like shoe collectors out there, right? I'm launching this eco-friendly travel shoe, and there's a lot of people who love shoes, right? And you're like, okay, here are these group of shoe collectors, so they're probably gonna love my product, right? And these shoe collectors here, who it's a community of 100,000 people, 200,000 people, they're shoe collectors, but guess what? They collect high heels, right? If they're the people who exclusively collect high heels, yeah, they collect shoes, but if they collect high heels, do you think they're going to be interested in this eco-friendly like travel shoe that you're offering? Like, okay, maybe, right? Maybe people who are obsessive collectors of high heels want to support an eco-friendly travel shoe. Yeah, they might want to do that. But more likely than not, they're probably going to be more interested in taking their funds and their backing to a different, high heel that they've already been collecting. They've already kind of been really knowledgeable about, and they have a community and they're talking about this already. And so what that means is this person who's launching this, eco-friendly travel shoe clearly isn't going to make a lot of headway talking in this group of people who are going to be really interested in learning about new high heels. And so with every product that you create, the question isn't like, how do I build an audience? The question is, who is my audience? If you can't answer the who is your audience, you can't answer the how, right? There's no way. You can't skip right to how. You can't skip right to building community, because a lot of the time people build communities in the wrong way, or people build the wrong communities. Let me give you an example of that. A lot of the time people do things like, okay, I have this product, so what I should do is I should just go to Facebook ads and just find an audience that way, right? I'll just try all these different audiences on Facebook and spend money on it, and I'll just see which one I get traction on. On one hand, it seems like a good idea, right? Because Facebook is like a platform that does A/B testing, and Facebook is a platform that helps you kind of test your different ideas, different texts, different pictures, different audiences, things like that. But what people don't know is that if they do that, they have 100 audiences in mind, right? And they're just going and doing like $5 tests on all these 100 audiences. That's $500, right? If your whole thing is like, let's try like people who like shoes, and there's like 100 different audiences, you're not going to get anywhere. However, because that's just like, you're focusing on that, just how to build the audience, right? However, if you take a step back and look at who your audience is, you can take a look at these 100 different types of audiences for shoes on Facebook and narrow it down to people who would be most likely to back your project. So for example, in those 100 audiences that you're thinking about, or that Facebook has, or whatever, you can think, okay, people who are collectors of high heels, probably not. People who are obsessed with foot binding, probably not. So there's all these different like categories within the big shoe category that you could probably just kind of shrug off, because they're not the people who are most likely to like your stuff. And the way to do that is really to look at who your audience is, right? To look at who before you even go to like paid things. So what I usually do with this is I usually recommend, when you start with whatever product, with whatever idea it is, right? There's steps to this. Start with writing down, just like, okay, let's just take out a piece of paper. If you're listening to this, take out a piece of paper. If you're watching a replay, take out a piece of paper, right? And the first thing you do is write down, what problem does this solve, right? What problem does it solve? And why did I create this product, right? Like, why? Just write those things down. Why did I create this product? Like, literally, why did you create this eco-friendly travel shoe? Was it because you were traveling and you saw like all the trash pileups in different countries, and you saw a documentary about how trash in the United States gets shipped over to different countries around the world and to be sorted, and you saw that there were a lot of shoes in it? Or what were you doing? Or like, what happened? Or like, why did this idea kind of spark in your head, right? Why? From there, extract what problem this thing actually solves. What problem? So, for example, this travel shoe, you can say, I came up with this idea because I was watching a documentary. I saw there were a lot of shoes that people were shipping to these different countries. When I traveled to China, I saw that there were just like piles of shoes that were trashed, and none of these are recyclable. And, I've been an advocate of like climate change and all this. And so it all came together into this eco-friendly shoe that I wanted to build, right? Whatever the story is, it's there. Whatever the inception story is, it's there. Whatever reason is behind you creating the product, it's there. You just have to extract it. Take a moment, sit down, and just really think through it. Really think about it. Like, why did I create this thing? And from there, talk about like, second thing, write about like what problem it solves, right? For the shoe, you can say, yeah, the coffee fibers or the hay fibers, whatever it's made from, right? The hay fibers help make the shoe itself live longer. It makes the material be tougher so that it has a longer life cycle than a normal shoe would. Like a shoe that you would see in Nike or Adidas, it has a longer life cycle just because of the material, right? For one, things like it might be waterproof. So when you're traveling, you can go into walk through streams, go like swimming in waterfalls, go through a rainy day in the city, and they'll still be waterproof. And, your foot will be dry. So those two things, maybe that it solves the problems that your initial kind of inception was going for. So like, the fact that it lasts longer, right? It's great that it lasts longer. If it lasts longer, people have to buy less of it. There's like less shipping of shoes, and which means less gas, less pollution in the shipping, less pollution in the manufacturing process, less pollution in the recycling process. It's recyclable. Like there's all these things, right, that you can write about with just the why you came up with the story itself. So if you came up with it because you're so worried about climate change, like there's a lot of like things that the shoe would actually solve for, right, against other shoes. So you've written down why you created this product and also what problem this product solves, right? And with these two things, you can really kind of envision already who is going to be interested in stuff like this, right? Who is going to be interested in a product that solves this like climate issue and this product that really takes into account the world. Once you've done that, start making a list of people who might be interested in this. So for example, this eco-friendly travel shoe, I'd probably write, okay, people who are interested in travel, interested in global travel, people who are interested in travel to different countries, different cities, people who are interested in traveling light, because since it's one shoe is like waterproof, lasts really long, you don't need to pack a lot of pair of shoes. So people who are interested in traveling to different countries or maybe around their own country, but traveling very light, just one backpack, right? So writing those things down, one backpack traveling light around the world, right? Like you like that. Another group might be people who are really interested in eco-friendly products, right? Eco-friendly apparel, mostly eco-friendly apparel. Yeah, people are interested in eco-friendly apparel and products, right? And so with this list, I encourage you to write out 10 different groups potentially, right? 5 is good, but 10 is excellent. So try to get to 10 if you can. Write down these 10 different groups, and the first most low-hanging fruit place to go after this, once you have those 10 listed out, like audience types or like psyche, people who might like this just from that story that you started off, your inception story. From there, go to Facebook. I know it's silly, but go to Facebook. don't do the ad part. Go to Facebook and go to the search bar. Go to Facebook, go to the search bar and type in some of these keywords that you have, right? Like one backpack travel or like minimalist travel. Whatever those words are, type it into Facebook and click on the groups button. Once you do that, you'll see that there are either a lot of groups for this, or there's a few groups, or there's no groups for whatever keyword that you're doing. More likely than not, you're going to be very surprised that each of these keywords are going to bring up a lot of groups and a lot of big groups too. Okay, you're going to be very surprised. Why? Because right now, Facebook has built itself into a community where people come and like hang out, right? It's pretty much an online community where people who have like-minded interests come and hang out. Like there's even a group for people who love kazoos. Kazoos are like these like little instruments, and they're like little plastic ones, and you like blow into it and it goes. Eh. But anyways, there's even a community of like probably 10,000 people or something of kazoo lovers on Facebook. So I encourage you to get started there. Like really look at all these communities and see if they exist, right? If there are people out there who might be interested in something that you're making. From there, get in touch with the admin. Say, hey, I'm thinking about this new product. Do you think this would be of interest to people in your group? Or go into the group itself and start looking what the members are talking about. Start looking at what people are interested in, what people are curious about, what people have questions on, what the struggles are, what kind of problems people have when it comes to travel or when it comes to having their eco-friendly apparel or world-friendly apparel or climate-friendly apparel. Start just looking at that and asking those questions, because you'll find out that a lot of these people either will care and they'll be the right audience for you about what you're making, or they won't, in which case go back to the drawing board and start looking down a different rabbit hole and start looking down to a different group. And, this was like tactical, right? I was talking like very platform specific. However, this applies to a lot of different platforms too. If you want to do this with, say, a search on the internet, that works too. You can type in those keywords and type in, like, for example, minimalist travel, right? You can type in minimalist travel blog or like eco-friendly apparel blog. If you type in those words, like whatever your idea is, plus the word blog, you're going to find either that there are no people who want to talk about this at all. There's a few people, or there's a lot of people who want to talk about this, in which case, start reaching out, start reading about all these things, because you need to know, right? You need to know if people are interested. You need to know which people are interested in it. If you're finding that people who are doing minimalist travel and minimalist one bag travel, things like that, are way more interested in this eco-friendly travel shoot than people who are in the kind of climate change, care about the world, eco-friendly apparel group. Like if those two groups are kind of like your big main groups, and you found that the minimalist travel people are more excited about this product, and there's more articles kind of talking about different like long-lasting, waterproof, shoes that people are. If you're finding a lot more of this in one group rather than another, like that's going to be your core group. That's going to be your core audience, because a lot of what is being written about, a lot of what is kind of being talked about will really just answer most of your questions, because people love talking about their own problems. People love talking about ideas that they have. People love talking about their needs, right? And so if people are talking about this and you have a solution for it, and this particular group is a solution for it, then, if this particular group wants a solution for it, then that's your audience, right? Again, this is very tactical. You can talk, I was talking about Facebook groups, I was talking about searching on blogs, but you can look anywhere. You can look at, like hashtags on Twitter. You can look at subreddits on Reddit. You can look at pin boards on Pinterest. There's so many different channels where you can go and do this exact same research. But just remember the strategy. The strategy is that you have to really know why this product was created, what this product solves for, and who might resonate with these same ideas, right? If you figure that out and you can go anywhere in the world and start looking for these people. And that's kind of the secret to building the right audience. You have to know the who before the how, right? The how is a completely different subject. You have to know the who first. And a lot of people skip this part. Unfortunately, a lot of people do skip this part. And that is one of the main reasons why campaigns fail. One of the reasons why projects fail is because people don't take the time and the effort to really figure out who their product is for. Like, for example, if you go to like Kickstarter or Indiegogo and you look at different campaigns that have, launched and failed, right? A lot of the time, it's a problem of audience. They either didn't have a big enough audience of the right people, right? Because you need a big audience to get a product funded. They didn't have a big enough audience of the right people, or they just didn't have the right people supporting them, although it's a really cool product. One example of this is I was recently talking to this game designer, and he launched this product in this game, and it was, he was getting a lot of traction in the community, in the game community. He's a really great guy. Like, he's been working on this for a long time, and he's a great artist. And then he launched this game, and it didn't fund, right? And so we were kind of diagnosing it. We were like, okay, so who's your audience? Like, what's this for? How'd you build your audience? And we're kind of going through like all these things. And then we found out that kind of he was kind of pushing a boulder uphill in a way, right? The game, it talks about kind of like cryptids. So things like Loch Ness Monster, things like Bigfoot, things like it incorporates all of these different like fun little creatures into the game itself. But the main audience that he was talking to, the main audience that was, for this game that he was like talking about was people in the game industry, and not necessarily people who were interested in things like the Loch Ness Monster or the New Jersey Devil or anything like that. But throughout our conversation, he was like, oh yeah, people who like have huge cryptid communities, people who have like subscription boxes about cryptids, people who have a community of like a blog about cryptids, they actually reached out and they were like, oh, once this thing is live, I'd love to like work with you on this. And, stuff like that should actually be a clue, right? When you're building your audience, when you're starting to talk publicly about your game or whatever product it is, if you're starting to talk publicly about it and certain groups reach out to you and they're like, this is amazing for my community, that should be a clue that there might be people who are going to be there who are super interested in what you're doing that you might not be thinking about. And so the audience for this game is actually the cryptid community rather than just a typical game community. And that's sometimes hard because sometimes it takes a while to crack the nut, right? It takes a while to find an audience that would be right for your particular product, for your particular idea. But that is honestly, again, one of the main reasons campaigns fail. They don't have the right audience, or they don't have a big enough size, right? So today we talked about how to find the right audience, and that's the most important part. Yeah. So if there's any questions about this, I know this is like one of the tougher topics. If you have any questions about it, be sure to leave it in the comments, and be happy to come back and answer any questions you have at all, because this part is kind of the key to crowdfunding, right? Like all the processes, the systems, the launch sequence, all of that, it's systematized, right? All of that has been tried and true. Right? I've helped people raise $13 million this year, more than $13 million this year. And it's all a set system, right? There's different ways, different things you have to go through to make your launch happen and to make your launch work. And it really is a system. And the part of the system that people fail a lot of the time is that audience part. A lot of people just don't know what to do when it comes to the audience. So I encourage you to really do this activity. And I really encourage you to, write down the why you created the product, the what problems it solves, and kind of the groups that would resonate with this, because that's your key, one of the keys to your success. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Crush Crowdfunding podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful in any way, be sure to leave a review so that other people will have an easier time finding this crowdfunding content. I hope that this podcast was helpful in your crowdfunding journey, and I can't wait for you to go out and crush it. Thanks for listening to the Crush Crowdfunding podcast at crushcrowdfunding.com. Tune in the same time next week for more ways to crush your launch.